Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sheryl Sandberg, and I'm really excited to be here with the Commonwealth Club's Inform and all of you to interview the great Arianna Huffington on her latest book. So there's a lot of things people already know about Arianna. She was the founder, and she is the editor and president and CEO of the Huffington Post, which is today the largest newspaper in the world, 25 million readers in 11 countries, and just founded in 2005. I think everyone knows that Arianna emigrated to the United States from Greece when she was 16, emigrated to the UK when she was 16, studied at Cambridge, studied economics. We know she's written 14 books. We know the Huffington Post has run a Pulitzer Prize. What not everyone knows, but I have been lucky to know, is just what a wonderful and amazing human being she is. I met Arianna about 10 years ago. We were both speaking at an event in San Francisco, and she adopted me and became the big sister I always wanted. She has been there for me and so many women through everything I've been through. She is a great career advisor. She is a great hugger, dryer of tears, and laugher of laughs. I'm excited to welcome my dear friend, Arianna Huffington. So, this is Arianna's new book. It's Thrive. It came out yesterday. And it is an amazing book. I read it on my Christmas vacation this year. I couldn't put it down. And I'm excited to get a chance to talk to you about it. So,
thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. And the one thing Sheryl didn't mention is that she didn't just read it during her Christmas vacation. She sent me line edits, literally. Like, cut all these references to Aristotle, a few too many, and restructure the entire epilogue. But then what puts her in the kind of editor hall of fame is that on Monday, she sent me an email. She said, I was looking at the finished book, and she said, for the next edition, gazelles, it says in the index that it's page 59, but it's actually page 61.
Okay, I really like the book. So let's start, Arianna, with your path to writing this book. How did this start for you? Because this is an amazing journey and an amazing story.
So it actually starts the way I start the book, the first line of the introduction, which is on April 6, 2007. I was lying on the floor of my office in a pool of blood, having collapsed from exhaustion, hit my head on my desk, broke my cheekbone, and got 4 stitches on my right eye. So it really starts with a very rude awakening, a wake-up call that only kind of got more intense during the weeks that followed when I was going from doctor to doctor, from MRI to echocardiogram, to find out what was really wrong with me medically. They thought it could be a brain tumor, it could be a heart problem. It turned out there was nothing medically wrong with me, but just about everything wrong with the way I was leading my life. And that's really when I started asking the question, what is success? Because by the conventional definition of success, which in our culture right now is really 2 metrics, money and power, I was successful, the Time 100 list, covers of magazines. But by any sane definition of success, if you are lying in a pool of blood on the floor of your office, you're not successful.
So when this happened, how long did it take you to make changes in your life?
It was very dramatic. You said something when you read the first draft. You said, there are other moments in your life when you could have woken up, You said very kindly. Because, there were other moments, and the book is partly a personal journey. There are moments when I lost my first child that was stillborn, when I had a breast cancer scare and a biopsy that turned out to be benign. There are moments like that when I could have re-looked at all my priorities. But it took that rude awakening, and then after that, I first of all made one big change. You know, they say that if you want to change your life, you need to begin with changing one habit. They call it the Keystone Habit. And the habit I changed was to go from 4 to 5 hours sleep a night to 7 to 8 hours sleep a night. And that was transformational.
That's right. So one of the many pieces of advice in this book, and she actually says specifically to women, Arianna advises sleeping your way to the top. It's part of my journey as well. That did not come out right. Let me finish the thought. For many years, I thought that the way I would, get everything done is just get less sleep. And Arianna, every time I would see her, first question before hello is, how much sleep are you getting? You look tired. Darling, you look tired. Which I was tired. And she really kept saying, you need to sleep more, you need to sleep more, you need to sleep more. And it was a very interesting journey for me because the reason I learned to sleep more was when I had children.
Yes.
I watched them. And for those of you who have seen children, pretty much if your child does not get enough sleep, everything is a disaster. Right? And if your child does get enough sleep, nothing can go wrong. And I thought how interesting it was that children were that way, and then I thought, wait a second, Arianna keeps telling me I'm that way too. And I figured out that when I got enough sleep, everything went well, and when I didn't get enough sleep, how is it that you realized this? Because you urged it on me, and I think so many people long before. How did you learn how important sleep was? And do you still advise women to sleep their way to the top?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Incidentally, I remember one time we were at a conference together, and you're coming down the hallway, and you said to me, okay, I know, I only got 6 hours last night, but I promise I'm going to have a nap this afternoon. So the way I realized it is because I started reading, and the science about sleep is absolutely incontrovertible, and it's only gotten even more profound since 2007. And now, I have 55 pages of endnotes in the book. So for any skeptics here, when you read the science from the biggest universities and hospitals, you'll see that sleep is really a wonder drug. And what you said about children is so key. But also, you can look at athletes. Now, elite athletes are prioritizing sleep, meditation, yoga. I don't know if you saw the video of LeBron James meditating that went so viral. But there is also another thing that Charlie Rose, in a conversation with Andy Murray, the great tennis player, they talked about how when you're recharged and rested and you're on the court, the ball is coming at you in slow motion, which means you can handle anything. You have time to make decisions. And I feel this is a great metaphor for life, because I know that when I'm burnt out, whatever happens, I feel kind of overwhelmed by it. I feel like it's all coming at me and I have to react. And it's not a good way to live. I mean, that's really, for me, the biggest realization I had when I switched to 7 to 8 hours sleep, is that it had been a very long time since I was actually really rested. And in the last few days, speaking to different groups, I've had so many women come up to me and say, I don't remember the last time I wasn't tired. And that's like, why are we doing that to ourselves? That's really the big question that I'm asking in the book. Why do we think this is the good life? Greek philosophers used to ask this question, what is a good life? And we kind of shrunk the definition down to money and power. And now we need to expand it again to include what I'm calling the third metric.
So let's talk about the third metric. In the book, which has 4 chapters, it has 4 elements: well-being, wisdom, wonder, and giving, and we'll hit each in turn. But you talk about all of this adding up to a third metric. So what is it?
So the third metric is what really gives life meaning, purpose, and joy. Joy is very important. One of the things I want all of us to do is to put joy back in our everyday lives. Again, why did we sort of decide that we're just going to go after whatever it is that we want, and that that's all that matters, and define ourselves by whatever that is? And I had this kind of realization, which is really the realization of every major religion, philosophy, everything, but you don't have to believe in God or a particular religion to believe that, which is that ultimately, who we are inside ourselves, like the essence of who we are, is greater and more magnificent than whatever we are in the world. And that's kind of a big shift in terms of how we look at our life. And it means that we can never shrink ourselves down to our to-do list.
So you're arguing for something pretty profound, which is a change in the definition of success. I know you also argue that everyone should define success for themselves. So how do you go about doing that for this amazing audience who's here? We're going to go home tonight and we're all going to redefine success. How?
Well, the first thing is to look at what is it that you want to do in your life. And that is what is that you want, not what society wants you to do, what you read in a magazine everybody should want to do, but what is it that you want? And that's why I think that Lean In has been so important to so many millions of women around the world, including my 2 millennial daughters.
Thank you.
Because it basically tells us, don't let your fears, your self-doubts, your images of yourself filibuster your dreams. And I know from my own daughter, who is a senior graduating this year, that when she read your book in draft, she immediately said to me, I'm going to do what Sheryl says, which is ask myself the question, what are you afraid of? And she decided...
It was a great answer.
Yeah, she decided that what she was afraid of is to call the editor of the Yale paper where she's at school and tell him that she really wants to start writing. And she was afraid to do that because she didn't know whether he would reject her or, all the things that stop women, more than they stop men, from taking this step. So he welcomed her with open arms. She started writing, and it sort of changed her life and her definition of herself. For me, that is huge. Do not let our own fears stop us. In the book, I called these fears the obnoxious roommate living in our head. And I was recently on Stephen Colbert's show, and I told him that my obnoxious roommate, I said, Stephen, sounds exactly like you.
We should ask the audience, how many obnoxious roommates sound just like Stephen Colbert? Gotta be a few. Raise your hands.
Well, because it's kind of very sardonic. Obnoxious roommates are often sardonic. Mm-hmm. They put us down. They tell us we're not good enough. So overcoming that is a big step. Once that happens, then we decide what is it that we want. And then to realize that while we are going for our dreams, that we cannot be defined by them. Because that's also what often stops people. The fear that they're going to fail, and then if they fail, it's almost like their survival is at stake. I mean, as you know, I write a lot about my mother in the book. The book is dedicated to her. And when we were growing up in Athens, with little money, in the first draft of the book, it said with no money. But then Sheryl said, you can't say with no money, because no money is people who really have nothing. So, so I changed it to little money, and she's right, because obviously, we were not completely destitute, but we lived in a one-room apartment. My mother was always struggling, and she and my father had separated when my father told her, when she complained about his philandering, not to interfere in his private life. So the one thing that she kept saying to us, to my sister Agapi, who is here, and me, is failure is not the opposite of success. It's a stepping stone to success. And that means take risks, and if you fail, see it as part of the journey. But if you completely define yourself in terms of that success, then you're going to be much less likely to take risks and maybe fail along the way.
So you've described this, the third metric, redefinition of success, as the third women's revolution. It's interesting because as I read your book and we talked about this, I think the book's principles and practices are just equally applicable to men.
Absolutely.
But you've also said that you found women more interested.
Well, what I found is that the world, first of all, let me just say what I mean about the third women's revolution, that the first women's revolution was giving us the vote. The second women's revolution was giving us equal access to all the fields of work, at the top of every field, equal pay, and this is a very incomplete revolution.
Correct.
There is a lot of work that has to be done. But I think we're never going to complete the second revolution if we don't launch the third. Because the third women's revolution is about women saying, we don't just want to be at the top of the world, we want to change the world.
Yes. Woo! I think that is well said.
Because, the world the way it is now is not really working. And the world the way it is now was designed by men.
And run by men.
And run by men.
And run by men.
Yeah.
I say this. Turns out men still run the world, and I'm not sure how well that's going.
Yeah. Exactly, because it's basically, look at the amount of burnout, which is, I think, affecting the planet. It's not just individual lives. Look at the fact that, just to give you just two quick statistics, 75% of our healthcare costs in the States are because of chronic, preventable, stress-related diseases.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And also, women are paying a heavier price. The latest stats that have come out show that we internalize stress differently. So women in stressful jobs have a 40% greater risk of heart disease and a 60% greater risk of diabetes. So we can't even afford not to change workplace cultures. The great news is that there is a shift in the air, and we've talked about that. And we now have, it's almost like we have two very dramatically different realities coexisting. The old paradigm of a workplace fueled by burnout, sleep deprivation, exhaustion, a corporate culture where people are still using all these male, macho, war metaphors like we're killing it, we're crushing it.
We're about to kill it. We're about to crush it.
Yes. Yeah. And then, you have the most popular book among CEOs, apparently, is The Art of War, the Chinese military treatise that talks about how deception is at the heart of war. And I think maybe we should just give CEOs books like The Giving Tree. Or maybe Make Way for Ducklings. I don't know, just like, because that
or
really...
Thrive.
Or thrive. Because the reality is that the workplace has changed. Modern work is different. It requires much more teamwork, flexibility. It's much more project-based. So a lot of these old paradigms can shift. But there is that other reality where we have 35% of American companies, and I don't mean just Facebook and Google and the big companies here, but Aetna and Target and little companies all over the Midwest that are recognizing that if they take care of their employees, they actually will be better for the bottom line.
That's right. So this goes to your first chapter, which is well-being. You have said sometimes we need to lean back to lean in, which I wholeheartedly agree with. You also said something very funny to my husband and I last night, which is you said, people take such good care of their cell phones. Your cell phone gets to 17% battery, and we all run around like crazy people looking to recharge our cell phone. Yet, we get to 17%, and we're not looking for our own recharge.
We don't even notice.
We don't even notice,
yes.
But we're so worried if our cell phones get down.
Literally, people begin to panic if it gets down to...
It gets down.
To 8%, and we have all these little recharging shrines all over our offices.
That's right. So you have very specific suggestions for how people recharge and thrive.
Yes. So, again, we each have to create our own cocktail because we are all individuals. But again, following your editorial suggestion, I have at the end of each of these 4 sections 3 small baby steps. Because my biggest hope is that people will not just read the book and say, oh, I agree with that, but that they will make small, little, microscopic changes. And that's all it takes.
And I did it.
You did it.
I've been meditating 5 minutes a day, almost every day.
Which is big.
But trying.
Yes.
On days I know Arianna's going to call me, I always get it in. But it was a very important conversation because I read it, it's like, oh my God, you have to meditate. And I pictured myself in a room for 4 hours a day and thought, I can't do that. But I can do 5 minutes.
And that's what we put in, because that's what Sheryl could do. So now that's what the book says. Start.
But it makes it approachable.
Absolutely.
And I'll confess to sometimes being able to go longer now because I started with something.
And because you begin to get a reward, and because you realize that thoughts are going to come, and it doesn't have to be some incredible, like, earth-shattering experience, that is just some quiet time with ourselves. Because especially, I'm sure most people here, we are also hyper-connected to technology, and technology has been magnificent in so many ways in our lives and around the world, and connecting us and democratizing areas of the world and people who otherwise would not have a voice. But at the same time, there is a snake in this digital Garden of Eden. And that's the hyper-connectivity to technology that often disconnects us from ourselves. And another thing that I feel is very important is that when we talk about meditation, we need to remember that that's just the word we tend to use more today. But you can use prayer, contemplation, whatever it is that
gives you quiet.
That gives you quiet and connects us with our inner wisdom.
Yeah. So some of the things you suggest, sleeping more, walking, meditation, these all take time. And people, especially women, are tired, overburdened. A lot of people are really worried about getting by and don't have any time in their lives for anything. How do you believe these concepts can be accessible for everyone?
Well, the first thing is to stress, and that's such an important question, that all these concepts apply to all of us wherever we're in life, whether we're at the top of the world or whether we're struggling to put food on the table. That's why I have a whole section where I quote people in concentration camps. I mean, nothing can be more extreme than that. And you have Viktor Frankl, who basically wrote in his great book about the fact that we actually, no matter how much is taken away from us, we have this ultimate freedom of choosing our own attitude and what we think. And that is very profound. That's really the whole Stoic philosophy. And there's a book that I quote a lot in Thrive by Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor of Rome. And every night he would go to his room and write what came out as meditations. And his whole point was, how can you become imperturbable? How can you not let all the challenges, the things that upset us during the day actually disturb our inner peace? How can you be the eye in the middle of the hurricane? Of course, nobody's going to achieve it all the time, but it's such a great goal because it empowers us, no matter what is happening in us, to actually become more resilient. And there is a study to answer your point of what happened in Illinois when the Bell Company downsized, one of the most dramatic downsizings in American corporate history, over 50% of its employee force. And they followed everybody who had been downsized. And 2/3 of them had a really, really hard time. I mean, they became alcoholics, they got addicted, they got divorced. 1/3 thrived. Not only did they do well, they did better than they had done before. So that challenge brought all the resources to the forefront.
So the next chapter you talk about wisdom, which is a big word and something I think everyone wants more of. My favorite line in the book, other than the obnoxious roommate, is the power of the hunch. You say, when your inner voice speaks, shut up and listen. Is this how you think we achieve wisdom? Is wisdom learning from others? Is wisdom learning from ourselves?
Obviously learning from others, but I think learning from ourselves, because I really believe two things. One is that we all have that place of wisdom, strength, peace, and joy in us. We all have it. We've all had glimpses of it. We've all experienced it, however fleetingly. And the second thing I believe is that most of the time we're not going to live there. So life is really about how quickly can we course correct and get back to that place. And it can actually be done very quickly. And I was talking to a friend of mine who was a pilot, and he said to me, most of the time planes fly off course. The reason we don't have more accidents is because there is an impeccable course-correcting mechanism. And in order to have an impeccable course-correcting mechanism, we need to really listen to our inner wisdom, listen to our intuition. And the more we listen to it, the more it develops. But we need a little more silence for that. You know, as I was writing this book, I realized that I had a bad habit, which was that the minute I would walk into my apartment or into a hotel room, I would turn on the television. And especially kind of feeling that because I run a 24/7 media organization, I should always be on top of the latest news, etc. And I said, okay, let me try not to do that and have a little more silence in my life, to listen to those whisperings. And it was amazing what happened. First of all, I didn't miss anything.
Well, you can find it on the
amazing.
HuffPo.
Well, you can actually so quickly get caught up on the news. And also, I realized that during that silence, there's really so much of that inner voice that I was more able to listen to.
That's great. So you talk about wonder. And one of the many things I've learned from you, again, is watching children. And I read this great article on the HuffPo called "The Day I Stopped Saying Hurrying Up" by a mother. And I think this article went pretty viral.
Yes.
It was by a mother. And she talked about how she felt that she was constantly hurrying her child up. And I realized that I was doing that too, that my daughter is incredibly capable of wonder. So, you know, when it's bedtime, she can pick up every object in her room and look at it as if she's seeing it for the first time, and then put it down and then pick up the teddy bear. And this can take us way past bedtime. And I was reading your chapter, and then I was reading this article, and it really came together to me that wonder was letting those moments, rather than it's time for bed, letting her look at that teddy bear again and experience it anew. What are the moments in your life when you feel that you most experience wonder?
Well, first of all, let me say that I watched it this morning. Sheryl had this lovely book launch party for Thrive last night, and I spent the night in her guest room. And this morning, watching you with your daughter and seeing her how she was, you had to get her to school, but there she was, and she was writing in her journal. And she was writing, and the way you handled it, I didn't tell you that at the time, was just so lacking any kind of rushing her, kind of honoring her experience. And that's hard to do because you have to get her to school, you have to go to work, so it's very natural to move into the hurry up, hurry up. And this blog post that you wrote, which went crazy viral, it was read by 6 million people, it was, it got to 1.2 million likes on Facebook, etc. Is I think because it resonated with something in us, not just the way we treat our children, but the way we treat ourselves.
Finding wonder for ourselves.
And for me, learning, I mean, that was where I started remembering my mother, who used to say all the time, don't miss the moment. Because that's really all we have. We cannot DVR our lives. And yet we're so used to DVRing everything.
So you have a chapter on giving. It's the last of the 4 elements of the third metric. And you talk about how, and I really appreciated this, it shouldn't take a natural disaster for us to give. And we see this. Charitable donations focus go way up in the natural disaster, but really there's a lot of need that exists every single day. And you talk about the power of giving and why it's good not just for the recipient, but for the giver.
Yes, I think that's going to be a transformational moment when each person really gets that. That's why I have so much science about it. That in our DNA, we are actually wired to give. That biologically, nature rewards us when we give. So they've done studies of how our biological inflammation markers, which is the precursor of disease, go down when we give, and they go up when our pleasures are purely what they call hedonic, meaning purely self-gratification. Obviously, life is going to be a mixture, but if it's all one without the giving part, we pay a price. And Richard Davidson, the professor of neuroscience in Wisconsin, has done amazing work showing that giving is a shortcut to happiness. And one of the reasons actually is that when we're in a getting mode, which obviously we all are in aspects of our lives, we are operating from lack. Because no matter how much we have, we are trying to get something that we don't have. When we are giving, no matter how little we have, we are operating from abundance. So we're more expanded. And that's why one of the things I write in the book is how do we move from honoring in our culture go-getters to honoring go-givers. And yesterday you spent the day with this amazing group that created Free the Children, We Day. And what I love about We Day is that it involves children. And you took your children there. And I think that's going to be key, getting our children to learn that giving is part of life from very early on. So it's not something that they do around Thanksgiving or Christmas, but something that is part of their everyday experience. And I remember when Isabella, my youngest daughter, was 5 years old. We were living in Washington. And I was having them volunteer in Anacostia at a place for at-risk children called Children of Mine. And by coincidence, which as we know in the book, I think coincidences are the miracles that the universe performs anonymously. But so it happened to be that the day before was Isabella's 5th birthday, and we celebrated with balloons and presents and a big cake. And the day we were at the center was a little girl's, these were all at-risk children in Anacostia, 5th birthday. And her entire birthday celebration was one big chocolate chip cookie. That was her gift, that was her birthday cake. And from across the room, I could see Isabella tearing up. And she rushed to me, and when we got home, she said, I want to pick up all my presents and take them to that little girl. Now, Isabella did not turn out to be Mother Teresa. She had many moments of selfishness since then, but I really believe that experience, taught her something that I could never have taught her, no matter how many lectures I had given her. And that's why I think starting children early is so key.
So you've said that you think the moment is now. And there does seem to be more interest in mindfulness. There's been a cover of Time magazine. But you've also said that these ideas connect very directly to ancient tradition, Greek myth, Greek mythology, religion. How do you see the connection between kind of the older ways or the more traditional ways that are still very much alive of spirituality and the new mindfulness and the third metric? Bring this together for us.
It just happens to be the truth. And the truth is rediscovered. Every generation rediscovers.
As if they're first.
As if they're first, right? As if we just kind of discovered all these things. But in fact, they're incredibly ancient. And there may be different names, different ways we express them, but they come down to one thing. The Bible describes it as the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God is within. Archimedes, if you don't want me to quote a spiritual source, let me quote a scientist. My Greek compatriot Archimedes, he said, give me a place to stand and I can move the world. That is that place. That is the place we all have in us. And basically what every religion and every spiritual tradition and every great literature tells us is that life is shaped from the inside out.
That's nice.
And that's really, for me, when we realize that life is a huge classroom. And it's not just about collecting victories and triumphs. It's about sandpapering ourselves and learning through whatever comes our way.
That's great. So now we're going to turn pretty quickly to social media and audience questions, so get ready. But in the meantime, we're going to do the lightning round. So you have to just answer, no thinking, mindful. It's perfect. New York or LA?
New York.
Oh, wow. That is new. I'm fairly certain Arianna would have said LA a couple years ago. Democrats or Republicans?
Democrats.
Favorite U.S. president?
Oh, Abraham Lincoln.
Books?
Hands down.
Books or blogs?
Books.
Wow. Blonde or brunette?
Blondes thrive more.
Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert?
Oh, no!
If you've ever seen Arianna on either one of these shows, it's an unbelievable thing.
That is very cruel. That is a selfish choice.
Say both.
I can say both?
Yeah, you can say
She
both.
just gave me a pass. She said I can say both.
Mountains or beach?
Beach.
Mornings or night?
Night.
Favorite movie?
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Time machine, forward or backward?
Oh, forward.
Greek or American food?
Greek.
Billy Joel or Bruce Springsteen?
Bruce Springsteen.
Beyonce or Beyonce? I'm a big Beyonce fan. She's a feminist.
Are you
I was only
asking
letting
me
you
about
pick
an
her.
accent? About how to pronounce it?
Favorite drink?
Oh, definitely. Soy cappuccino.
Thank you notes, email or handwritten?
Email.
Wisdom or wonder?
Wow. Wonder leads to wisdom.
Sleep or meditation?
Sleep.
On becoming fearless or thrive?
Oh, thrive.
Okay, we're going to take audience questions in about 5 minutes, so get ready. But right now, and if you have a question for Arianna, there are microphones, I think, in the center here. Please come up. But we're going to turn to social media. So a few days ago, I posted on Facebook and asked for questions for Arianna. I got this actually from a woman I was friends with in my childhood. Davi Damilo is exciting. Okay. She writes, the summary of the book, and it wasn't out yet, so it's not her fault she hadn't read it, seems like she's reflecting on a major life epiphany. Knowing now what she does, if she could go back and do things differently, what would she do? What major differences would there be in her career choices and actions, in her family choices?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would first of all have said to my younger self not to worry as much. Because I worried about so much, and I would say to my younger self to believe what Rumi, the poet that I quote a lot in the book, said, live life as though everything is rigged in your favor. So no matter how it looks, trust, trust, trust. And I would have avoided so many anxieties and unnecessary worries. And it's a little bit like what Montaigne, the French writer, said. There were many terrible things in my life, but most of them never happened.
From Shelley Carell on Facebook, what do you see as the biggest barrier to redefining success, and how will we get past it?
The biggest barrier is that our world sends us insistent flashing signals to keep climbing the ladder, making more money, to basically live our lives based on the first two metrics. And we need to therefore create our own rituals, our own tribe to support us as we are making these changes. And I love this passage by Ian Thomas, the writer, who said, every day the world will yank you by the hand and say, this is important, and this is important, and this is important. And you must worry about this, and worry about this, and worry about that. And you must yank your hand back and put it on your heart and say, no, this is important.
Nice. I'll take one more social media, and then we'll turn to the audience. From Nicole. As a working college student who wants to go to an Ivy League graduate school, more sleep is not an option. So already you have to tell Nicole. It is. That's what I used to say. It is an option. Is Thrive something that really applies to me at this stage in my life, at the very beginning of my career?
More than ever. You know, that is really such a great delusion. It's a delusion that our world has really paid a huge price for. And I see it, you know, with my daughters. I see it with their friends, the idea that you sleep, you lose, you'll sleep when you're dead, you know. And you see the casualties, you see the price we're paying, you see what's happening in colleges with addiction and blanking out from drinking and stress. And we really need to keep talking about role models who, at any stage in life, have integrated all these practices and have thrived and succeeded by every measure.
That's great. All right, we're going to turn to our audience.
Hi, I'm Julia. You two are some of my biggest heroes, so this is very humbling. As a 15-year-old girl, I've noticed that a lot of times putting yourself first and having high self-esteem is seen as kind of vain and narcissistic. Do you have any ideas about how I could overcome that?
Well, first of all, you have to ban the word bossy, right?
Correct. We have to encourage you to lead.
Yes. Why don't you take that question?
Yeah.
Because you've been saying so much about it.
So I think what happens systematically is that a lot of us feel insecure that we're not up to tasks. I think we know the data that happens more to women. We also know that we encourage boys to lead by using words like leader and discourage girls by using words like bossy. But we also know that you have a great future ahead of you, and that in order for you to make the changes you want to see in the world, you're going to have to start by believing in yourself. What I tell people when I'm not telling them to read Thrive and learn to meditate is, don't wait till you feel the confidence, just do it. Ask yourself, what would I do if I felt the confidence or if I wasn't afraid? And take your seat at the table, raise your hand, ask your question, try to do something. You'll either succeed and then you'll prove to yourself that you can, or you won't and you'll learn how to succeed the next time, but show yourself you can step up to the plate. We think you can do it. This whole audience thinks you can do it.
That's a hard act to follow. Hi, my name is Lisa Nash, and I had my moment. I left a corporate marketing career and started a nonprofit on safe drinking water, and it changed my life tremendously. So I would love to know from the two of you, how do you see your lives thriving in the next 5 years?
So I see myself as a work in progress and as continuing to get better and better at all these things that I write about, because I don't think it's like an overnight thing. I think it's a constant process. And two things that I do more and more often now are, one is to do a constant kind of life audit and look at my projects and look at the things that I haven't even begun, but I'm thinking I may want to do. And it's very liberating. I remember how liberating it was, for example, when I decided that my project of becoming a good skier was just not going to be ever completed. And so I dropped it, and I learned that you can complete a project by dropping it. So I plan, to continue both to be dropping projects and to be focusing on new things. That I may not even know about. That's what is so exciting.
I think it's great. I think for me, I've kind of faced a lot in the last year, did things I didn't think I'd do before, and I think finding the space and time to do one thing at once has been something I've always really struggled with. I think a lot of us struggle with, not picking up my phone when I'm doing something else, finding those moments to just reflect. But the more I do it, the easier it gets, and I'm going to continue trying to be better at the things Arianna writes about too.
Thank you, and to you too.
Hi, my name's Renee, and I'll be honest that I'm not entirely convinced. So almost to build on that last question, I guess that was from Facebook, a part of me really wonders, would the two of you be where you are right now? To use the term success, right, which is a very loaded term, but to be in positions of such tremendous influence and prestige and power and even wealth, right? If you had really, up until this point, practiced what you are preaching right now on the stage.
Yeah, it's a fair question.
So first of all, thank you so much for raising this question, because this is the key question. And I've thought a lot about it. And I've actually gone back over my life and looked at what I did, the decisions I made. And I can tell you categorically, I can look you in the eye and tell you categorically, the answer is not only yes, but that I would have done it with a lot less cost to my health, to my relationships, to my enjoyment of my life, to my happiness. And I say that because when I look back, as all my biggest mistakes were when I was burnt out. And I quote Bill Clinton, that was one of your favorite quotes in the book, saying that my biggest mistakes I made when I was exhausted. He did not specify what mistakes. But bottom line is the same. And then I look back to not big mistakes, but even little mistakes, like hiring the wrong person, missing the red flags that we all get, that voice of our intuition when we know something, but we don't hear it because we are operating on automatic or rushing from one thing to the other. So in both big things and little things, life would have been incredibly easier. So that's something which I know you have to kind of take on trust, because it's very hard to completely believe it, because our culture is completely built on the opposite. And you look around, and that's why we need to tell the stories, and that's one of the things I want to do in the next year, of women and men who are doing it differently, not just after they reach a certain level of worldly success, but from the beginning, because I want my daughters to do it. I want you and our 15-year-old first questioner to see how much more effective we're going to be, not just in terms of our own personal health and well-being, but in terms of whatever our goals are.
You know, for me, I think a lot of what Arianna writes about remains really aspirational for me. I mean, I am really trying to meditate for 5 minutes, and it's really hard, and I'm certain I'm not doing it at all well, not even for a minute. So I don't know, and I'm learning, along with the rest of us. But the one thing I'm sure she's right about is sleep. And I resisted it directly, the pressure from her, for years. I have now become completely convinced that when I sleep less, I waste more time. Whatever time I think I'm getting by getting an hour or two of sleep, I make more mistakes that take more than an hour or two to clean up. Or I'm kind of groggy. Or I get more frustrated more easily, and then I regret things I say and do. And so on that one piece, I really believe that, you know, getting more sleep is something, and I don't always do it perfectly, but the extent I do it more has made a huge changes and made me much more efficient, and I'm using my time more effectively. So that part I really have experienced and believe.
And that's a fantastic answer, because that's all you have to do. Just make one little change. You know, you don't have to do all my 12 steps, as it happened that there are. That was accidental. You know, just pick one step. And it doesn't, if you don't want to pick sleep, although I highly recommend it, you can pick doing a gratitude list every day, which seems trivial, but it's incredibly important because it focuses us on what we're grateful for rather than what we're upset about.
Well, I just got a couple of hours of sleep last night, so hopefully this will come out all right. But my name's Tim.
That was your last night of 2 hours sleep, right?
3 hours. But my name's Tim, and as writers and speakers, you both have advocated the benefits of gender equality. And as a culture, and specifically many men feel that gender equality and feminism comes at some kind of cost to men in terms of power, in terms of influence. So how would you suggest enlisting men, specifically younger men, in seeing that as a gender equality actually gives them benefits instead of takes away their power?
Yeah, I love the question. I love the question, and it's so key to so much of what I believe. I don't believe we can say to men, you should do this, you know, gender equality is good for someone else. The truth is, it's good for them. And there are a lot of men that have spoken out on the HuffPost and other places saying that, here's what we know. We know that if you are better at working with half the population, whether you're the most junior level employee or the most senior level CEO, you're more effective at work. You either can be better because you're a better partner and people want to work with you more, or you can be better because your whole company can use half the population better and be more effective, and lots of studies show this. We also know that when men are more active partners at home, particularly in heterosexual couples, where the dynamic and the amount of housework and childwork is usually so uneven, those marriages are happier, more sex, very compelling for a lot of people, men and women. Importantly, at any income level, no matter how active a mother is, children with more active fathers and involved fathers are happier, have better educational attainment, better outcomes. And so gender equality is important for all of us and for men as well, and only happens with men like you who ask the question and take the steps.
Hi, my name is Alicia Robb. I'm with the Kauffman Foundation, which is a foundation that's with a focus on entrepreneurship. One of the areas where we haven't gained gender equality is entrepreneurship, specifically high-growth entrepreneurship. And Kauffman's interested in disruptive entrepreneurship that creates innovation. How do we get more women to lean in the field of entrepreneurship? Because in order to get power and influence and make the world a better place, we need power and influence, and entrepreneurship is one way for us to get there. How do we get more women in entrepreneurship and women investing in entrepreneurs?
Well, actually, I think that if you look at the new world where women are creating their own jobs, building their own startups, and we're seeing that including in technology, but not at all in the numbers we want to see it. There is a certain flexibility that comes with that. That is something that women are looking for. I mean, we see everywhere the statistics of women who have children and are able to leave the workforce, and we have 43% of them leaving the workforce, and only 40% of those who returning full time. So there's something wrong with this picture. There's an enormous amount of talent wasted. So if we can educate women to the power and the importance of entrepreneurship instead of just following a particular corporate career ladder, it's going to make a huge difference.
My answer to this is we have to fight the stereotypes. That the stereotypes are completely self-reinforcing. When we expect something to look and act a certain way, we don't like it when it doesn't. So this is what's happening with technology. Women are getting 13% of the computer science degrees in this country, 13%, down from 35% 3 decades ago. Then we expect computer scientists to look male. There was a magazine article that was doing a study was doing an article on female entrepreneurs, and they did that article by putting them on male bodies, on the bodies that looked like Larry Page and Mark Zuckerberg, because that was the only image of entrepreneurship. When we tell women they can code, they code. When we tell women they can lead, they lead. When we tell women that they can be entrepreneurs, they can, and I think that's incumbent upon all of us to do that.
And also just one more quick thing, which is to publicize and put a spotlight more on the women who have done it. We were talking last night about Padma Sriwarrior, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Cisco. And she's obviously phenomenal at her job, running thousands of engineers, but she's doing it her way. She talks about getting 8 hours sleep. She talks about...
That's really aspirational.
Yeah, and she's the Chief Technology Officer of a major company. She talks about taking Saturdays off for her, what she calls digital detox. And that's the time when she writes haikus and paints. And she meditates. So, you know, we don't have a lot of role models like that. And when we talk about it, it encourages the rest of women.
First, I want to thank you guys for just being so open and honest and creating this space. And I also want to thank my mom for inviting me tonight, because I wasn't going to
Yay, I want to thank your mom.
Tomorrow's her birthday, too, so this is really awesome that we both get to experience this together. The question that I have for both of you is, being a Black American Muslim, there's a lot of different stories that I'm connected to and narratives that matter to me. And I constantly see this perpetuation of negative stories around my community and the communities that I associate with. And so I'm curious to know about talking about the responsibility of media and social media, sharing stories that are positive around humanity, not just within the Muslim community, but then just the global humanity. We have a lot of amazing people in the world doing lots of amazing things, but we constantly see on the news, we constantly hear about negativity going on, specifically in the Black community and also in the Muslim community. So I'm curious to know, how do you, what roles do you see as responsibility of media and journalism today?
I think that's incredibly important. I think the media are not doing a good enough job at spotlighting what is working, at spotlighting the good things, the examples of generosity, ingenuity, compassion. And we have multiple dedicated sections doing that, including a section called the Good News section, that is one of our most popular sections, a section called Impact, sections called What is Working, because I think we need to put as much attention on covering what is dysfunctional, what is corrupt, as we're doing on covering what is good, what is generous. And social media here has a very positive role to play, because these are the stories people like to share.
Yeah, the data is very strong on a lot of the things that become the memes in social media, become the memes in Facebook, are very positive. Stories of compassion, stories of individuals fixing something, stories of connecting. Those actually are very viral. And we also have a lot of data to suggest that as people connect more with other people, their personal happiness goes up, which makes them more likely to share happy moments. And I think your point is really real. This is a world with a lot of stereotypes to overcome, a lot of assumptions that things will go wrong to overcome. So that positivity from all different role models is so important.
Hi, I'm Coco. And if you had to rewrite your book, would you change anything or would you keep it the same?
Coco, how old are you?
7.
Yay!
Wow.
Let's start by congratulating you for asking a question.
Yes. I think since Sheryl wrote her book first, you should go first.
Yeah, it's your book.
So in my case, actually I was thinking that today, as I was getting dressed, I thought if I had written my book now, I would have changed the following thing. I would have been much stronger about what damage the current definition of success is doing for us. Because the stories I have been getting from people, ever since they started hearing about the book or they've been reading excerpts from the book, are so horrendous. I mean, today I was speaking at the Watermark women's group and in the afternoon, and the stories of women who are making law partner and they got a blood clot or an ulcer, or the damage to women's health, because of the way our workplace culture has been functioning, has been horrendous. And I had not kind of fully grasped that. So now I would have actually written the following sentence, which I didn't write and I wish I had, which is, the current definition of success is literally killing us.
A question for you both as mothers. I have a startup and a 1-year-old. How do I balance my desire to spend every minute with him and my desire to keep my business successful?
So I would say the first thing is to look at what are the things that are negotiable and what are the things that are not negotiable. And I know from myself that there are many things that are negotiable that I would love to do. I mean, it involves saying no to things that I would love to do in order to be able to say yes to the things that I need to do to recharge and renew myself. And also, whatever it is that I'm doing, to really do it 100%. The biggest mistake busy juggling mothers are doing, and I've made those mistakes a lot, are to think that by multitasking, when we are with our children especially, we're going to be able to save time. The last time my mother got angry with me was when she saw me reading my email and talking to my children at the same time. And she literally looked at me and she said, with an accent that makes mine seem completely insignificant, she said, "I abhor multitasking." And now modern science is backing her up. Modern science shows that multitasking is actually the most stressful thing we can do. It's not really effective at all because it's task switching.
I think for me, two things. We have these great posters at Facebook, and one of them says, "Done is better than perfect." Done is just better than perfect. You can't do, I don't do anything close to perfectly, and really giving yourself permission to do 80%, not 100. And the second is really forgiveness. I think as mothers, as women, I'm sure as men too, we hold ourselves to such high standards. I have a story that happened in my life where I dropped my son off at school on St. Patrick's Day when he was 5 wearing a blue t-shirt. And you know, the woman who opens the door in the carpool lane gets out and she says, "It's St. Patrick's Day, he's supposed to be wearing green." So I do what any mother would do. I spend the entire day completely unable to focusing on how I'm a horrible mother. And maybe I should leave, and you know, I'm sure Target has a green t-shirt, I could just run in. Well, then maybe I'm gonna be that crazy mother showing up with a green t-shirt and embarrass my kindergartner. And so halfway through this really stressful day where I really did feel, I mean, joke about it now, but I felt bad. I called my husband and he said, "Oh, our son learned something really important today. He learned he didn't have to be like everybody else." Forgiveness. We're not going to do everything perfectly. Forgive yourself, forgive others.
And it sounds like having a good husband helps.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
I think this is our last question.
Oh, thank you. I'm Mickey Bright Griffin. You once wrote that empathy and wisdom are drowning in opinion. For those of us who have loved ones or husbands who are caught by loud opinion shows, do you have any suggestion of widening those conversations?
Empathy and compassion are
Drowning out opinions. She's asking if you have very strong opinions, like a husband with very strong opinions. What would you do?
So I think
Arianna knows many people with very strong opinions.
I
She's
think
never a great answer to
you
this.
should follow Sheryl's advice and forgive him, first of all. And also, empathy and compassion are not in any way antithetical to strong opinions, because yes, empathy and compassion are totally tied to wisdom. And because in the end, if we don't, one of the first things that I feel every wise person has taught us is that we are all kind of connected, however much we disagree, and that the worst thing we can do is to demonize people we disagree with. And that just because we don't disagree with them, it doesn't mean they're Hitler. You know, I remember the Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert rally, you know, which was precisely about that, you know, restoring sanity in terms of our national conversation. That's something we have to learn and relearn every day. Is your husband here? No.
Okay, so in the Informed tradition, we are going to ask all speakers the following. Last question. What is your 60-second answer to how we can change the world?
So my quick answer is that we need to realize and remember that because life is shaped from the inside out, every time we actually show self-compassion towards ourselves, it's going to be easier to show compassion towards others, and that will help us change the world. Every time we forgive ourselves, it's going to be easier to forgive others, and that will help us change the world. Every time we actually connect with our own health and well-being and avoid being burnt out, it's going to help us avoid burning up the planet and change the world. So all these things are very interconnected. And that's why I want us to end the way I end the book, which is upward, onward, and inward. Adding that word inward is going to help us change the world.
Thank you so much. Arianna Huffington, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. You're amazing.